Yeah, so we've got a good show for you here today. I've got Isaac and Alex. First, we needed to address the fact that clearly Alex is being held in a Hoth bunker by Al Qaeda at an undisclosed location. And I gotta say, before we got the camera rolling, because I gotta call him out here, I said, "Are you on Hoth? Hoth?" And he didn't know the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek.
Everyone should know what Hoth means the second they hear it. There's no other interpretation other than, of course, the planet from Star Wars.
So, Alex, I gotta ask you. I'm not even sorry to pick on you, Alex. When you see the meme, okay, going around in like wintertime in Canada, and it's Han Solo up on a tauntaun saying, "I'm going to Tim's. Do you need anything?" Like, does that look like a big sheep to you?
I have no idea what any of that means. Like, you might as well be speaking a completely different language. I didn't have cable growing up, and I never really liked sci-fi. I still don't.
All right.
Dude, you don't need cable to watch Star Wars, man.
The only thing I liked about Star Trek was my sister and I would watch the very beginning and we would try to find the string. Do you remember like the very beginning, the opening of Star Trek, how it would show like the spaceship coming in and you could actually see the string?
It was a wire, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can't get this distracted. Although this is providing me some happy distraction after that absolute dumpster fire of a fiscal document that we refused to call a budget. But we'll work on them, right, Isaac? Like I get over 60% on the geek test. I beat 2 over the Sean Newman podcast the other day. Have you taken the geek test yet, Isaac?
No, but I'm sure I'd pass it with flying colors.
Okay, it's on like Donkey Kong because nobody's beat me yet, so I'm going to send it to you after we get started.
Okay.
Speaking of
the
which,
geek test?
You don't want to know, dear.
It's self-explanatory.
It's okay. All right, let's get this thing started. Hi. My name's Kris Sims. I'm the Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. I'm also the host of the show here on Juno/True North called The Fighter, because we're always fighting for lower taxes, less waste, more accountable government. I'm joined here by 2 of my friends, Isaac. Isaac is holding down the fort. You're in Edmonton right now, right?
Yeah, Kris, I tell you, I went to bed last night. It was like September weather, and I woke up this morning, January weather, snow everywhere. So,
yep, grab the shovel. It's here, which is why I was riffing off the whole Empire Strikes Back thing with Alex, and then he blinked at me. But that could also be because, are you in New West right now, Alex?
Yeah, I'm in the Royal City.
Right. So the original capital of British Columbia before it was usurped by those uppity people from Fort Victoria, right? Because they just wanted to take it from the good people of New Westminster. And New West gets like half an inch of snow every 10 years or so. So this is probably why I didn't know what Hoth was. Okay, we have a lot to go over. Federally speaking, the so-called budget, okay, was released this week. And I'm using that term very loosely because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's just a disaster. Like, it is a complete disaster. I can't believe that Prime Minister Mark Carney has his PhD in economics. I can't believe that he was the head of the Bank of Canada or England. This is worse than I was expecting because we've got a $78 billion deficit, meaning we are piling more and more money onto the debt, and they're spending more than $30 billion more than they did last year. Okay? So, guys, I don't know who wants to jump in on here first, but I was at such a loss to explain this dumpster fire of a fiscal document that they're calling a budget. I think they think money is a social construct and that it isn't really mathematical or tangible or real. Who wants to jump in on this first? Isaac, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, a few things I'll say, Kris. The first thing that stands out to me is, people are so short-sighted. We forgot like less than a year ago, Chrystia Freeland resigned over a budget that was less bad than this. And then the Liberals are presenting, as you said, Carney as this economic mastermind, only to present a worse budget that the former finance minister resigned over. It makes absolutely zero sense. And one thing you didn't mention yet, Kris, but I'm sure you'll get into is, of course, the debt. Because I saw the CTF mention, what was the debt going to get to this year? 1.35 trillion.
Correct.
And then what was it? 1.6 something trillion within a few years. I mean, these are numbers. I can't even picture the amount of zeros that number has in my mind when I'm trying to think of the number 1.3 trillion. It's like, what is that? You can hardly even understand what a billion is, let alone a trillion. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. And, it's funny. I was talking to some people, non-political people, let's say, at my church about the budget. And I just said, God help the children. Like, you think people can't afford to live now? God help your children. They will never be able to afford to live in Canada.
We're heading there. Three things. One, a trillion, like to Isaac's point, and it's not being silly at all. It's hard to conceive of that big of a number. Okay. A trillion is a 1 with 12 zeros after it. If you started counting right now, like picture yourself like Scrooge McDuck, okay? Swimming through your gold little loonies there. If you started counting right now in dollars, it would take you 30,000 years to count to 1 trillion. Our ice age was more recent than that, like with the mammoths and stuff, okay? Like, this is bad. The debt interest charges that we are paying every year. Guys, I have to be clear with all of our viewers here, and I know this sucks, okay? Pardon my language. I know people don't like thinking about debt, okay? Because it's upsetting, but we have to face this, okay? Interest charges on the debt are not some economic guru fungible thingy that they hide. It is a line item in the budget. We have to pay it as a bill. It is costing us more than $50 billion this year, more than $1 billion a week. To put this into perspective, it costs $1 billion to build a hospital. Okay? So every week I want people to visualize when it comes to the debt interest, picture building a brand new hospital, fresh paint, like stainless steel handrails, all the magical doors that open on their own. Burn it to the ground every Saturday night. That's what we're spending on debt interest right now. Alex, I see you nodding your head there. It was worse than I was bracing myself for. I was bracing myself for a maybe like $60 billion deficit, the way that the PBO was warning, but it's close to 80. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I think the hospital analogy is a good one, specifically because the federal government, what I find interesting about it is they don't really have carriage over that many things.
No.
The federal government is only really responsible for border security, the military, and tax collection. How do they possibly justify spending this much money? I mean, the big ticket items like a hospital or a school are handled by the provincial government. What are we getting for this money?
That's a great question. So the big stuff is big waste, like corporate welfare, like tens of billions of dollars out the door, gone. Something as dumb as having a state broadcaster, for example, the CBC is $1.4 billion this year. Oh, and they confirmed, remember, it was super weird timing. Remember back during the federal election and the federal government announced more money for the federal state broadcaster, an extra $150 million, which I just, hit pause. That flies in the face of a free press so bad that it's kind of embarrassing to point out. It's like having to remind somebody to put pants on before they leave the house. Like, it's so stupid. But no, they confirmed it in the budget document, an extra $150 million for the CBC. So those are big ticket items. But then there's like the totally stupid stuff that they spend money on, like $100,000 to make a documentary about a grocery cart. Like sending, I forget how much money it was. It was about $1 million over to Vietnam for like gender neutral rice production. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what that means, but you're paying for it. So yeah, to answer your question, Alex, they blow so much money. It is just criminal how much money they waste.
Yeah, Kris, there's a something I've been thinking about recently, just comparing modern governments to, let's say historical governments. I really feel that's what's fallen the most, is the respect for taxpayers' money. I mean, look at these modern liberal type governments. They have zero respect for taxpayers' money. They don't care. They don't treat it like it's their own money. Whereas I feel like historical fiscally conservative governments were the opposite. They actually respected the money as if it was their own, as if they made it themselves. And that's clearly not the case with the liberals. It's like you have, imagine in your head that you have infinite money and you could do whatever you want with it. That's pretty much how the liberals behave.
Yes, it is. And I got to point out, this is always the way with every single liberal government. Like, this was definitely the way with the first Trudeau. In fact, this is kind of haunting, the language that is being used here, because Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the first Trudeau prime minister, he tanked the economy too. He tanked the budget too. And they were talking about dumb stuff like calling spending investing, as if international credit rating agencies care what kind of label you're sticking on your spending budget. Spoiler alert, they don't. They're also talking about building Canada, as if, to your point, Alex, that's the government's job. No, it's not. Like, please get out of the way. You're bad at this. Like, you're bad at everything. Quit doing this. You're wasting money. And I'm almost hesitant to bring this up again, but I'm seeing some headlines now from international credit rating agencies that are looking real hard at that budget. They're looking at the expansive nature of government and the crazy level of spending. You were talking about praying, Isaac. Everybody pray we don't get a credit downgrade.
Kris, there was something that I wanted to talk to you because this I don't think has gotten as much attention as maybe is warranted, especially when it comes to teachers and nurses and the way they like to use this in their favor. But of course, we saw in the Liberals' calculations, I think it would have been in net debt to GDP or debt to net GDP comparisons. They're using the CPP as an asset, as if they could spend the CPP as if it's an asset because because there's obviously so much money in there, and without that, their calculations would be much, much worse. So can you just talk to that, Kris? Because we've heard teachers, nurses, and everything, especially in Alberta, when it comes to separation, like, you're not going to touch my pension. It's like, well, look at the federal government. They're using your pension as an asset on their fiscal documents. And so is it the same both ways or not?
Great question. And this is concerning. The issue here, to your point, okay, how do I put this with like a normal person? So, okay, if you were trying to say get a mortgage, okay, or getting a really good rate for your line of credit, like, hey, bank, or whatever you're trying to sweet talk to get a low interest rate, you would list stuff like, to your point, Isaac, your assets, okay? How much is your truck worth? How much is your current house worth? How much is anything else that you physically own worth? Because, of course, the money man, the lender, has got it in their mind of, if this person loses their job or, just stops doing anything, I could get that, seize it, and sell it in order to get my money back. That's what it means when you're listing something as an asset. So, yeah, I would understand why people would be alarmed by that. Now, apparently they've done this in their calculations at different times before, but that doesn't mean that this isn't an issue. That doesn't mean that this isn't a problem. I would be concerned about it just because from my own experience, I remember when previous Liberal government back in the 90s used the EI fund, the Employment Insurance Fund, which was our money. Like, workers pay into that every paycheck. Okay, so do employers, but it's the workers. No, the government just used it. So that's, totally valid. Go ahead, Alex.
So on your micro comparison, I used to be a lender. And
listen to this.
Fun lender fact for you. Pensions are not considered assets by the banks because they're exempt from forfeiture.
Oh, interesting. So why would they then play silly with this in the budget document?
Well, it's a rule for me and a rule for thee. Right. But like as an individual, if you go to the bank and you say, I have $1 million pension, therefore give me a mortgage, the bank counts it as a $1 value, because in the event that you cannot pay your loan, we can't take your pension. But the government is going to list it anyway because it's the government. Yeah.
That's even worse than I was expecting you to say. Well, this is great. Who wants to chat about the industrial carbon tax? Now, I looked through this thing. Now, the budget is based on my reader. It's 498 pages long. Yeah. I couldn't find the dollar value yet attached to Carney's stupid big hidden industrial carbon tax, but it's in there. He confirms
I have a few things on it, Kris.
Give her.
So the existing rate of the industrial carbon tax is $80 per ton, which will rise to $170 per ton by 2030. But the increases because it's set to increase subsequently until 2050, those were not listed. Mm-hmm. But one thing, before I get into the numbers on the industrial carbon tax, there's something I need to highlight. So, and this is much thanks to you, Kris, and the advocacy work that the CTF has done. But of course, the Liberals are now acting as if the carbon tax, the consumer carbon tax, is the worst thing ever, and they hated it all along, and they didn't push it, and they didn't spread misinformation about it, about 8 out of 10 people, and I could go on. But yeah, there's just so much virtue signaling about the carbon tax in the budget, in my opinion. They literally said in their table lines, they had the header, divisive consumer carbon tax. Like, it's ridiculous. They literally put divisive in the fiscal calculations. They're acting as if, oh, the consumer carbon tax is the most divisive, worst thing ever. But here we are, we're just going to swap that number over to the industrial carbon tax, which you can't see anymore. And now it's a complete secret. And we're just going to act like, yeah, but the consumer carbon tax is irrelevant, because I mean, it's just insane. But to get more into the industrial carbon tax, it does get a bit more concerning because, as you well know, Kris, some provinces kind of handle this on themselves. For example, in Alberta, they have the tier system, which is how they handle industrial carbon tax pricing. But what the Liberals said in the budget was they're essentially going to up their power, from what I understand, so that they can force the federal carbon backstop on provinces if they fall short in the Liberals' eyes. So we've seen this in Saskatchewan too, where they try and go against the carbon tax. But I guess if these provinces in the Liberals' eyes fall short of the federal standards of the industrial carbon tax, they're going to be able to force it onto the provinces. So we might see some legal battles over jurisdictional power, I guess. I don't know exactly what's going to come from this, but yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's just virtue signaling in my eyes, because they're acting as if the consumer carbon tax is the worst thing ever, while they're going to double, triple, quadruple, who knows, the industrial carbon tax. And obviously, even Carney eventually admitted that this cost will be passed down to a consumer. I mean, in my eyes, a child could even comprehend that. The businesses are just going to absorb these costs. What do you think?
To your point on the consumer carbon tax, which apparently, all of a sudden is the worst thing ever. Everybody needs to read George Orwell. Okay, read all of his books, because this is straight out of the Newspeak, Duckspeak, dictionary. It's disgusting. I'm going to point something out here on the regular carbon tax, the one that is gone right now. So it's about 20 cents cheaper per liter for gasoline, typically at most gas stations. So I was curious. I'm like, I wonder how, because it's gone now as of April. How much did this Liberal federal government take from Canadians year by year in the carbon tax? How much? There is a number in the budget. But the funny thing is that these politicians are so fork-tongued that they hid the language of the consumer carbon tax revenue. Now, in a normal situation, you would just list it, carbon tax revenue. To be fair, in the BC provincial budget, it's just listed that way. It's right there under the revenue column. It's a line item. You can see exactly how much. But I had to dig for this, because I'm not kidding. I'm going to read it directly off of here. This is what the federal Liberal government called the annual tax take of the carbon tax. Quote, pollution pricing proceeds to be returned to Canadians. I kid you not. That is the line item label for the carbon tax.
This is what, it wasn't even divisive, the consumer carbon tax. It was illogical, because the government would say, well, we give back 9 times, or we give back to 9 out of 10 Canadians, as I recall. Yeah. Well, then what would be the point of collecting the tax in the first place? Like,
wealth redistribution, Alex.
Plus, the other thing is, like,
it's communism.
It's communism. It's not about the environment. What was so funny, legit. Okay, I'm sorry to go down my rabbit hole about the carbon tax, but seriously, when they first launched this thing, it's like, oh, it's going to reduce emissions. Well, then it didn't. And then it's like, oh, well, it's going to make people richer. And it's like, well, obviously a tax can't make people richer. That's stupid.
It's going to change the weather.
Sure. Yeah. And then it didn't. And then they were finally cooked, right? They knew they were cooked. And they're like, well, it's redistributing the wealth. It's like, this is exactly what we said this was going to be at the start. Oh, by the way, this is a gross number. I hope everybody that's listening, just sit down for a second. Since Trudeau brought in the carbon tax, the feds took more than $45 billion from Canadians in the carbon tax. Not touching anything else. That doesn't include the sales tax on top of it. Doesn't include the industrial. That single carbon tax, $45 billion. Isaac.
Yeah, and I just have to imagine that the actual cost to Canadians is so much higher, and it's never even possible to calculate this, because you think of, let's say it's 20 cents a liter, and that's the example you gave, Kris, and people just think about that at the gas station. No, every single thing you buy uses gas at some point. in transportation, obviously. So that cost is absorbed by every single thing you buy. So if that number is 45 billion and you somehow extrapolated that, like if you were some math genius and over everything, it has to be like trillions. I mean, it's insane.
It's a gross amount. Go ahead.
This is the illogicality of it as well. As they said, it returns more than it takes for 9 out of 10 Canadians. If that were true, then on the gross number, wouldn't that incentivize Canadians to pollute more?
You'd think, let's go get rich. Crank the carbon tax up to cajillion. We'll all be millionaires.
Crank the heat up so that we can get some of that rich man money. Like, that doesn't even make sense.
No, I know. It was so dumb and so illogical, and it lasted for so long. It's infuriating. Remember when Trudeau, I can't help it. Screw it. Remember when Trudeau said that you should prioritize paying the carbon tax over feeding your kids and paying rent?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that. He said that on a stage that he flew down to in Brazil in a jet. Okay. I remember when he said that the only people truly feeling the effects and the cost of the carbon tax were people in a big house with an indoor pool and 3 personal vehicles. He's describing himself there, of course, because he literally grew up at 24 Sussex with an indoor pool, which was built by taxpayers when he was a child. Like, the guy, anyway. So he's gone.
Isn't that building derelict now too? Isn't that building derelict now? Like, nobody can even live
it's
there
full of
because
mice.
It's overrun by rodents.
It's a rodent hotel. Okay.
Chris, I want to just ask you something quick on that, because obviously with all the advocacy work you guys did at the CTF on the consumer carbon tax, that in my eyes, that's a much more visible tax to consumers, to average taxpayers, to Canadians. So it was easy, let's say easy in that way, to present that to Canadians. How much more difficult is that going to be to do with the industrial carbon tax and the costs that actually pass down to consumers?
That's a great question. A, short answer, it is more difficult. B, we're still going to do it. So what we need right now is, so Franco isn't just a smart guy on TV. He actually has his master's degree in economics, like big time economics. We've got some smart people that are working in our Ottawa office who are working through those numbers. But we also need industry to speak up. They cannot just sit back and let this happen to them. Okay, we have got to have fuel refiners. We've got to have oil companies and gas companies. We need to have steel and aluminum companies. We need to have fertilizer manufacturers have the courage to stand up out loud with their face and say, this is costing us this. Give us the numbers. Because for the longest time, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, for the longest time, around the late teens, early 20s, even the trucking industry, I don't know why, they were scared to point out how much they were getting screwed by the carbon tax on diesel, which runs everything and moves everything in Canada. And I don't know why that they didn't want to speak up, but we have got to put that behind us. Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservatives in the opposition, he wrote an outstanding article for the National Post. It feels like it's about a year old now, give or take. It's basically where he said, we don't need lobbyists having lunch in Ottawa. We need companies, corporations, and advocacy groups giving us numbers and fighting like hell for their people. I don't care if you want to have cocktail weenies with the minister. Nobody should care about that. You should care about what government is doing to you and how much it is costing you. And to their credit, to their immense credit, the pipe workers out of Hamilton, they said so during the election. They said Carney's industrial carbon tax would, quote, decimate their industry. So much so that they backed the blue team. And as a labor union, that's the first time I can remember seeing that in my life. So that's a great question, Isaac. The short answer is it's much more difficult. The longer answer is we're still going to find it. And lastly, and I hate pointing this out because job losses matter. Like, those are kids' Christmases. Like, I don't want to get choked up, but I've been in that situation before as a kid, especially in the oil patch. So we'll ultimately see it when we see companies and industries leave, because the United States does not have a national carbon tax. It has no industrial carbon tax. Even Barack Obama turned his back on having a national carbon tax. So ultimately, that's where the cost is really going to be obvious. it's when they pack up and go south.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kris. I was talking to Finance Minister Nate Horner in Alberta at the legislature in a scrum when I was there, and I asked him that very question. I said, what is this industrial carbon tax going to do for the energy industry in Alberta? And he said, of course, it'll decimate it because the companies are going to move to the USA where that tax doesn't exist, obviously. And we've already seen companies depart without the industrial carbon tax going up. So I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we need to, if I can just appeal directly to Minister Horner, hopefully he's watching, or his staff is, get rid of Alberta's industrial carbon tax. I know the logic of like, oh, well, the oil executive muckety mucks say that this is, the square root of the hypotenuse and we need it for our industry. Stop. No. All you're doing by having a provincial industrial carbon tax in Alberta, especially when Saskatchewan doesn't have one, is giving permission for one. That's all you're doing. You're opening that door so the orc can stick his foot in it and drive it open, okay? Like, they have got to bite the bullet and get rid of Alberta's industrial carbon tax. I know they try to say, oh, it's closed off and it doesn't cost money. That's all noise, okay? They need to get rid of it, especially for the principle's sake. If you've got Scott Moe next door in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, declaring the rectangle place as a carbon tax-free zone, and Alberta's standing here with our own provincial carbon tax, that's giving a license to those taxers. Okay, they got to get rid of that thing. Alex, you wanted to jump in there. I saw you.
No, I mean, I think that the issue here, too, is that once you create a tax, you're creating an income stream. It's very difficult to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you need that income. If you're not getting it from pot A, you have to get it from pot B. And I think that is that one of the issues going on here with why we have to carry the $76 billion deficit? Is it that we're missing out on tax revenues that we are getting from the consumer carbon tax? Or, I mean, this is a little outside my beat. I don't know.
No, Alex, the line for that, it was in the budget. It was $4.2 billion. That was foregone from the consumer carbon tax. So that hardly is a contributor. I mean, it's $78 billion deficit. You can't.
Yeah,
carbon tax is $4 billion. It's a pretty small.
$40,000 million, but. Yeah.
No, but comparatively to the whole, it's like, 5%.
Yeah. So to your point, and that's a good question, Alex. To your point, straight up, the feds have a spending problem. They don't have a tax revenue income stream problem. They're spending too much money on too many things that it should be outside their wheelhouse. Exactly what you were describing, Alex. They should be in charge of national defense, borders, and not that much else. Okay, some regulatory systems.
I feel like that's a really great segue to our next story.
Yeah, let's give her.
Because Isaac did a great story. I believe, Isaac, you were the author on this one, if I'm not mistaken. And it's amazing that the government is spending more money on this gun confiscation program than they are on the border.
Yeah. So, speaking of border security, the Liberal government in the budget will spend more on its firearm buyback program next year than on NATO operations and border enforcement combined. I should specify this is just next year, not the subsequent years. But I mean, this is insane because, well, I'll go through the numbers first. So the budget lines, they're going to spend $364 million on the firearm buyback in 2025-26 compared to $253 million combined for NATO operations and border security. But this makes absolutely no sense because the Liberals just extended the firearm amnesty to October 2026. So what are they spending the money on? Because the guns aren't prohibited because the amnesty was extended. So it doesn't really make any sense at all. And I had a lengthy conversation with Tracy Wilson, the Vice President of Public Relations for the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. And I mean, there's so many quotes of hers I could highlight, but I mean, because look, in short, the Liberals are again virtue signaling here, more or less, because this does nothing to affect crime. We know in almost every scenario, when we've heard from police organizations, the 90+ percentile of guns, almost 100% of guns that are being used in crimes are smuggled from the U.S. It's not these firearms that are currently legally owned by Canadians, and they're not assault rifle firearms. I mean, let's get that right on the table. They are not assault rifle. They're not assault rifles, despite the fact that even in the budget it says banning assault style firearms or whatever. It says that they're assault style. It's not true. These are essentially hunting rifles. I mean, people use them for sport shooting. Rod Giltaca of the CCFR, he said that time and again that these are not assault rifles, despite what the Liberals keep saying. And then there's just so much background on this story now. We, of course, know Public Safety Minister Gary Nandasangri. He's said numerous insane things about this policy. Firstly, that it was always voluntary, which makes no sense, because if they end the amnesty, you are by definition a criminal under the criminal code. You for possessing an illegal firearm, which I think would face you 5 years in jail. So definitely not voluntary in that sense. If they end the amnesty, also I don't really know what that means, but I mean, and then we had the leaked audio of Ananda Sangri when he was talking to his tenant there. There was so much in there too. But a few things he said it was to appease Quebec. He said if he could do it over again, he'd do it completely differently. I mean, this is ridiculous. And they keep going down with this. That's one thing that Wilson said. She said, look, they had a chance in this budget to get rid of this divisive Trudeau-era policy, and they decided not to. I mean, so who made that decision and why? It makes absolutely no sense. Well, I'll read you this quote from her. She said, quote, "At a time of global instability and conflict and criticism of our military strength, Carney's Liberals choose to instead focus taxpayers' resources and generational debt on the pursuit of ideological policy that focuses entirely on Canada's safest citizens. The whole world is watching this embarrassment unfold while sending a message to other nations that we are not a serious country." And I mean, there is really no other way to say this. This is absolutely embarrassing. I mean, this isn't protecting anyone. You're attacking legal owners. I mean, and if you actually go on X and look at what people are really saying about this, it goes much further, because what does an authoritarian government really want to do? Disarm its citizens so they can't fight back. I mean, I could go on, but yeah, this budget line was interesting because I didn't see any other media cover it, but of course I'm pretty close with the CCFR and Wilson there. They're good contacts, so I was all over it, and I think this is definitely an important story that needs to be shared more than it has been so far. One other thing I'll mention on this firearm buyback, because of course it's provincial jurisdiction, and we're seeing all the provinces saying they're not going to do it. So what are you spending the money on? Alberta, Ontario, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. They have all refused to participate. Wilson said Yukon's going to join them now because they just had their election there. And then we've seen provincial police forces too. Ontario Provincial Police Force, Nova Scotia Provincial Police Force. They're saying we're not doing this. And the feds, what are they going to do? Send the RCMP to do it? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a huge waste of money. I will also point out that when we talk to police associations, like the unions that head up the cops who are on the front line, they always say this is going to do jack for public safety. Like, we are not, besieged by hunters and sport shooters in downtown Toronto using their legal rifles. Like, this is dumb to even suggest that. And they said basically our issue is smuggled illegal handguns coming from the United States being used by gangbangers, being used by criminals. So this entire thing, it's so similar to the long gun registry that happened back in the 1990s. When, again, a past Liberal government, I remember Minister Alan Rock talking about it. Oh, it's only going to cost $2 million of them. By the time it was done, it was $2 billion with a B. And people were no safer. And again, it was just going after like duck hunters and ranchers. I'm a firearms owner myself. And I have to stress to the rare people who are listening to this who don't understand legal, law-abiding, licensed firearms ownership in Canada, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get your license to own a firearm and to purchase ammunition. Like, they call your exes. Like, you have to go through a special program, usually with a retired RCMP or military guy, and you have to pass it with flying colors. You always have background checks done. You have to store your firearm very safely. To move it, you have to move it in a certain way. Even storing your ammo requires special kind of things. I will also point out that, again, it's not the legal law-abiding firearms owners that are the problem. The stats show it is the illegal handguns in the hands of criminals who are out on the street and not in jail, according to police, that is causing the problem here. So it's just going to be a huge waste of money, like an enormous, how I described it as a dumpster fire with the budget? That's a really good point, Isaac. Thank you for focusing on the firearms thing. Just throw more money on the dumpster fire. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, Kris, one more thing I wanted to ask that I forgot to mention, because of course the CTF was offering free legal support to firearm owners in Cape Breton, because despite everything I just said, despite the amnesty being extended, the Liberals still piloted this in Cape Breton, which doesn't even make sense, again, because the amnesty was extended. So these people had absolutely no obligation to hand over their firearms. So I guess the cops just expected them to bring their guns to, like, what was happening in Cape Breton. It makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, well, they did that because that's where they perceive their liberal political stronghold to be, is Atlantic Canada. But what I found interesting, as I have a lot of family in the Maritimes, if you don't bother showing up there in person, that does not go over well. And they made their little announcement from an office in Ottawa. They didn't have the decency to actually go to Cape Breton when they announced this pilot program, which definitely did not sit well with the locals. Talk about come from away. How about you're imposing law from away? Like, that didn't go over well. We had a big rally there with the Taxpayers Federation and Tracy and the whole gang, and hundreds of people turned out on a tiny little island of Cape Breton. So this fight isn't over, but thank you so much for highlighting the cost of that. Alex, did you want to move on to the Rogan comments here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is a fun one. So Joe Rogan, I think I'm surprised that he's paying this much attention to Canadian politics, frankly. I was in the United States like a couple of months ago. I was in Las Vegas, and I asked people, like, hey, what do you think about what's going on with Canada right now? And most people said to me, what is Canada?
I know.
So I'm always amazed anytime an American has any opinion at all on what's going on, and it always kind of like makes me warm and fuzzy. And I don't know if Jeff can pull up the clip here.
All we did was differ with them economically, and Trump tried to turn them into a state. He said, I called him Governor Trudeau. First I was just joking, then a lot of people told me it was a good idea. Yeah, I think that single-handedly ruined Canada.
Yeah.
That idea, I mean, that's the Republican Party, or their version of the Conservative Party. They were on the way out. They were
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the whole country united because Trump's trying to turn him into a state.
Yeah. Poilievre has got to be angry about that shit, man.
He has to be so mad. He was logical and reasonable, and everybody's like, let's try that for a while.
Do
Yeah.
you know what? That was the ultimate cock block.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? You're in the bar. It's about to happen with the girl.
It's going down.
It's going down. You're like, oh, I'm so
Canada's back.
Yeah, I'm so gonna get laid. Trump pops up, whispers something in her ear, and all of a sudden it's over.
Yeah.
Alex?
I'm going to take a really contrarian opinion on this one.
I don't speak Barbro, so I'll leave it to you gents to try to translate that.
I'm going to take a very contrarian opinion on this one in terms of the small C conservative crowd, and I'm curious to hear how you react to it. I know that I'm Monday morning quarterbacking here, but in hindsight, I think that Joe Rogan is so correct in that assessment that one of the failures of the Poilievre campaign, let me rephrase this. One of the great, brilliant successes of the Carney campaign is that they didn't run against Poilievre. They ran against Trump. Mm-hmm. Trump's approval rating, according to, I can't remember who the pollster was, but it came out in April, right around the election. His approval rating in Canada was 15%. So if you run against Trump, you are running against the least popular politician in Canada. And I think that one of Poilievre's failings was running against Carney rather than running against Trump. And when Trump said, I would prefer Carney to be prime minister, in my opinion, that was the kill shot. Poilievre should have ran that in every single ad campaign for the entire election cycle. Because in Canada, unfortunately, if you want to win an election, it's all about tricking the low information senior voter and making them scared. And if he had said, a vote for Mark Carney is a vote for Donald Trump, I think he would have won the election.
He did.
Yeah,
though.
that's more or less what Carney said, even though it was all lies.
He did, though. In fact, that's why Trump said that, because he knew that he'd stepped in it, and politically speaking, and that's why Trump then tried to stuff the toothpaste back in the tube and say, actually, I like Carney. I want him to win. And it just, I think by then it was too late. They did clip that. Like, I saw those ads all over. Maybe you wouldn't have seen it in BC, but I was seeing it whenever I was up in Calgary. It was like flooding my my phone. But I didn't see it in Lethbridge when I was at home. But whenever I was close to like downtown Edmonton or Calgary, it would because it picks up where you are. And I did see those ads. But I think it was kind of cooked where Pierre Poilievre did hold that kind of Canada First rally thing. Remember that? It was in Ottawa. You had all the flags and everything.
Yeah, but it was Canada First as opposed to anti-Trump.
Right.
Like that's a different thing entirely. And in Ontario and Quebec, people, like, I was in Montreal during the debates, and I was interviewing people, and everybody said their biggest issue. One guy told me my number 1, 2, and 3 issue is Donald Trump. Right. And look, I know that that's ridiculous. And I know that the right-wing crowd on X, and I consider myself to be right of center myself, so I'm not like denigrating right-wing people or anything, but a lot of them said they got very upset when Poilievre criticized Trump. Who cares? At the end of the day, politics is about getting the votes that you don't have. It's not about making the votes you already have extra happy. And it
does matter for turnout, though, right? So you don't want them, A, staying home, or
you don't want to demoralize your base either.
Right. So I've been in campaigns before, both covering them as journalists and working. That was a rough campaign. They had a fishing line that they had to walk along during that mess. I often wonder what would have happened if Trump had just not said anything. If he would have won, there's silent. No, I don't know.
Most of the really pro-Trump and conservative adjacent crowd is in Alberta and Saskatchewan and in places where Poilievre already has the votes. So to me, like, in terms of a political calculus thing, it would have made more sense to have aimed his target at Trump versus Carney, because what's the worst thing that could happen? You can only lose 5% of the popular vote in Alberta or Saskatchewan, where you're going to pick up most of the seats anyway, but then you'll pick up a lot of votes in Ontario and Quebec where you didn't already have them. Again, I know I'm Monday morning quarterback and hindsight is 2020, but that's just, if I could go back and change things for the Poilievre campaign, maybe that would be something I'd do.
You're going to bring me around. You're going to bring me around on math, man. And that was some pretty good math that you're doing there. Isaac, I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I do find it interesting that the right-wing commentariat deigns to notice Canada, especially with what's going on in the States right now. Sorry, but that's kind of a mess on the right-wing commentariat side of things. I guess what I'm looking at from a taxpayer's perspective is the tariffs. What's causing a lot of problems up here in Canada is that U.S. President Donald Trump seems to change his mind on tariffs, like they're in the middle of a court fight over tariffs all the time. And it just, costs us a ton of money because tariffs are just trade taxes. That's 100%. That's what they are. 2, the uncertainty that they cause. Like, it means that investors, like people with money overseas, don't want to leave their wallet here on our park bench because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. They have to open up X and check it out.
And if I can piggyback off of that point, Kris, on the tariff specifically. So a lot of people criticize Poilievre for not going on the Joe Rogan podcast, the gentleman we're talking about right now, because they said it would have made him look Trump adjacent. And I think that those theories are actually valid. But what he could have done, because there are so many people that just hate Trump, right? So anything that he does that's Trump adjacent is going to lose him votes. But what he could have done alternatively, again, in hindsight, is he could have gone on the Joe Rogan podcast and explained to Joe Rogan, like he was 5 years old, how tariffs are taxes and how tariffs are dumb. And because that's one of Poilievre's greatest skills, is diluting complex economic concepts and explaining it to you like you're a kid. And if he had done that, he would have been a hero on the left, because he would have slayed one of the left's dragons, that being either Joe Rogan or Donald Trump. And again, you have to get the votes that you don't already have. And there were so many disaffected NDP voters that he didn't reach out to. And that, I think, was a huge missed opportunity.
He got them on the labor side, but he didn't get them on that side. Yeah,
exactly.
So go ahead, Isaac.
Yeah, a few things I'll say. First of all, with the tariffs, I mean, people acting surprised as if this is some novelty concept. Speaking of Joe Rogan, I listened to Trump's interview with Joe Rogan before the Canadian election or before even the American election. I think he was super pro tariffs. He was presenting himself as a pro tariffs president. I mean, this was like an hour-long press conference about tariffs. He's the tariff guy. He loves tariffs. These are in
all of his books. Okay, like nobody's allowed to be surprised by this. Like, it's literally in his original book.
And then another point, just to carry off the surprising aspect, and this is my biggest concern, my absolutely biggest concern, especially largely, let's say, due in fact to the media landscape in Canada, and that being that it's mostly government subsidized media, so they more or less walk toe and toe with the government. But aside from that,
propaganda.
I'm propaganda. I'm very, very concerned that the people who voted for Carney don't realize how much of a failure and essentially how much of a liar he has been, because he presented himself, as you said, Alex, completely anti-Trump, but he's been the exact opposite of that every single day in office. He's more or less Trump's best friend. He absolutely loves and adores Trump. Every single interview we say with him, all he's doing is spending the whole time complimenting Trump. You're the best, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's actually embarrassing, even from like outside of this. It's outside of this situation that we're in with Carney and how he presented himself. Even if this was just a normal thing and we weren't in an economic war with the US, it would still be embarrassing to be that goo goo gaga over your counterpart in the US. I mean, so my biggest concern is that the Liberal voters don't realize they've been duped.
The issue is results. So if Carney were trying to placate, because, okay, if you want to win friends and influence people, okay, and network, don't stomp on their foot and spit in their face. It's just not a smart thing to do. If you're trying to network with people, in particular, a trading partner with whom you do $3 billion worth of trade per day, yeah, I can understand making sure you use soft soap, okay? Premier Daniel Smith did that to very good effect, which is why we've got a much smaller tariff on our energy. However, where's the result? Like, where is the trade agreement between Canada and the United States, which would save taxpayers money? The ones I care about are in Canada, but by the way, it would also save the average working American a heck of a lot of money because it would quell this uncertainty, okay? Where's that trade deal? Now, if Trump had gone scorched earth with every other country and he hadn't signed any trade deals at all and blah, 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 I could understand the argument of, well, he's just unreasonable. We're just going to have to wait this out. But that's not happening. He has signed trade deals with a ton of other countries other than us. So where's
Well, he kind of has to now. I mean, that's the problem with the U.S.
But even before this was happening, he's been inking deals all along, month by month. So where's ours? Like, as far as like the personal politics and goes, whatever, that's a means to an end. Our end right now is we don't have a renegotiated deal. And this is literally their job. We're paying the Prime Minister around $400,000 per year salary. We're paying bureaucrats whose names you don't know that are within the Department of Trade and Foreign Affairs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year each. They're supposed to be the pointy heads with the pocket protectors who know all this stuff, who do all this schmoozing, who do all this negotiation. Where's the result? Where's the result for taxpayers? Sorry, I could rant all day, but I think that's good. Anybody else want to do any more housekeeping here? We're good?
No, okay. That was a very agreeable conversation.
Except for the whole Star Wars bullying thing, which I'll get back to later. Okay, great. Folks, thank you so much for watching this. Be sure to like this video on YouTube, okay? Be sure to go on over and subscribe to Juno News, which of course is part of True North Wire. That's when you're going to get coverage like this that is not funded by the media. And I meant that when I said it, okay? We should not have government-funded media because it doesn't matter if it were Don Cherry reading you the news, okay? If the government's funding it, it's propaganda, okay? So it's super important to support independent journalism and independent media. So head on over there and subscribe. And until next time, remember, this is all somehow off the record.
I like that. This is somehow off.
Here I am off the record on camera with my mic on. Okay, fine.
I
all documented for history.
I always think of Michael Landsberg. That was it. Does anybody?
Oh,
else remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I missed that. Those were good before times. That was before the lockdown and before aliens took over the planet. Okay, good.
It was a great interview.
All right, this has been good. All right, I need to jump on another video here, guys. Thank you so much for this.